Rwanda has just unveiled Africa's first flying car, and Africans everywhere are rejoicing. The test flight took place live in Kigali, with President Paul Kagame watching every moment.
And Rwanda has carried out the public flight of a self-flying electric car taxi in the country, the first of its kind in the African continent.
Liftoff, a smooth and steady takeoff into the skies. But behind the celebration lies a story few dare to tell. While the world claps, alarming reports have surfaced online. Unsafe electric cables hanging across streets, makeshift poles, and tension wires running through villages. The kind of fragile infrastructure that could turn a futuristic air taxi into a ticking hazard. Unlike Western nations, where modern power supply systems run safely underground, Africa's weak infrastructure could make this innovation far riskier than it appears. And then there's the cost. The EH216S, the very vehicle showcased in Kigali, carries a global market price of about $410,000 outside China. For most average African citizens, that dream is completely out of reach. As the debate heats up, one fearless voice has resurfaced.
But she's also a danger to the continent if we are not careful.
Years ago, PLO Lumumba issued a stark warning: if Africa is not careful, moments like these, celebrated with joy, could actually be dangerous to Africa's future itself.
In the next 10 years, out of every 10 phones used by you will be Chinese. If it is not Techno, it is Infinix. If it is not Infinix, it's Huawei. No African country produces a phone, none. It's only Rwanda that is beginning to assemble some.
Rwanda's President Paul Kagame shocked the world with the historic launch of Africa's first flying car.
Today, for the first time in Africa, a self-flying air taxi will take to the skies.
A groundbreaking moment that was celebrated across the continent. Headlines praised Rwanda for taking a bold leap into the future, and Africa stood proud on the global stage. But here's the bitter truth. It wasn't made in Rwanda. It wasn't made by citizens of Rwanda. This futuristic machine was made in China, first launched there years ago, and only recently showcased in Rwanda as part of a partnership that will ultimately earn China profits for its innovation. Welcome to Win Africa, where we dive deep into the untold stories, expose the uncomfortable truths, and uncover what this moment really means for Africa's future.
I'm telling you to be inquisitive. Africa will not grow if our young men and women are ignorant. This is my message. Ignorance is a paralyzing agent. Today, when I drive through the streets of Kampala, I see Chinese making roads. Don't we have Ugandan engineers? Why are they making roads? If we have Ugandan engineers, your own president, whom I respect, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, was in Bali yesterday, launching 15 companies. If you look at the photographs in the Uganda New Vision, and the monitor, the president is accompanied by Chinese. Africans are clapping. That tells you there is something wrong. The Chinese leaders call Africans to Beijing every year. The 54 of them, they call them to Beijing. And they say this is how China is going to work for the benefit of Africa. I refuse to believe them. It must be that there is something that is being done for the benefit of Beijing. Because if I was Chinese, I would do that which is in my best interest, not in the best interest of Africans. It is so attractive that the Russians called our leaders only a few months ago in Sochi. And when they invite you to the best places. It is so interesting, so that the Russians can work with Africa for the benefit of Africa. That is how attractive Africa is. It is so attractive that the Germans also invited our leaders to Berlin. It is so attractive that even the Arabs are inviting them to Doha, and that is how attractive it is. Have you ever heard the Latin Americans being invited? No, I did not hear. Have you ever heard the Arabs being invited? No. It is only Africans who are invited. That is how attractive Africa is. Is it a bad thing? Depending on what you think. We can use it to our own advantage, or we can allow them to use it to their advantage. You know, when I look at Africa and I look at her in the continent, in the context of how attractive she is, another word comes to my mind called globalization. When we talk about globalization, you talk about globalization as if it were a new word. It is not. Africans were once globalized as a commodity in the slave market. We were sold everywhere in the world. That was globalization. That was globalization. Then we were globalized again through colonization. Then we were globalized again through neo-colonization. Now we are being globalized in the context of opening our markets. It is Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere who in one of his many enlightened moments said, when I hear the Europeans saying that we should open our markets in the name of globalization and they say that the rules are the same, I laugh, Mwalimu said. And he said, it is like a boxing match. The rules are the same. But you don't put a heavyweight boxer and a lightweight boxer and say the rules are the same. It is murder. Allow me to be melodramatic. You imagine the United States of America with a GDP of anything between 14 trillion and 15 trillion is now entering into a bilateral arrangement with Lesotho, whose GDP is 2 billion, and you say the rules are the same. It is a joke. It is murder, because the revenue that is generated by the city of Los Angeles alone in one day is more than the GDP of Lesotho. So we are being told to open our markets, and when we opened our market, you saw what happened? Our textile industries died. The large textile industry that we knew about in Kaduna, in Nigeria, died. Our cotton industries died. Our sugarcane industries died. Our waters, even water nowadays, water. Dasani, Coca-Cola gives us water. You go to hotels in African countries, the water that we drink has the standardization, not this one. This is from UCC. But this is the exception rather than the rule. This is the exception. The rule is water. Dasani, sitting in Atlanta, Georgia, determining what water we take, we of the middle class. Making Africa work is my subject.
Let's pause for a second. If you've watched this video up to this point, or you're still tuned in, it means you truly care about the message and support Africa's growth. Please take a moment to subscribe and follow our YouTube community. It shows that you appreciate the effort behind this content and want to see more stories that matter. Let's continue.
What is the danger of other powers operating in Africa? Do they threaten our being? And I'm now talking about China. China is a very interesting country from which there is a lot of things to learn. But she's also a danger to the continent if we are not careful. What is there to learn from China? The thing to learn from China is that during our lifetime, the Chinese, through their ingenuity, have succeeded in lifting nearly 800 million people out of poverty. What did the Chinese do? Is there something that we can learn from them? I think there is. Those of you who have the advantage and the privilege of serving in government, ask yourself, what did the Chinese do that within our own lifetime they succeeded in doing that? And they are everywhere, the Chinese. They know what they want. I think the first thing that you must do, you must know what you want. You know, last year I was sitting and watching a Chinese news channel, and if you want to understand what others who are potentially your friends and enemies are doing, you must listen to their news. I was watching the CGTN, and I was listening to the 6,000 delegates in China sitting and thinking about China, how China will deal with Africa and the world 100 years from thence. The people who are there will not be alive. In many African countries, if you tell them to think about what will happen tomorrow, they say only God knows. No. Africa can benefit from China. Africa can be the next factory of the world. But it's not just going to happen. Something must be done about it. Which is what brings me to the last segment of my conversation, Africa Agenda 2063. I remember on that day in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Nkosazana and Lamini Zuma, the then chairman of the Organization of the African Union, writing and reading an imaginary letter to Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah. I will not remember the words exactly, but I'll remember it in substance. And in substance he was saying, by the year 2063, we Africans, having recognized that we may have lost the last 50 years of our independence, will not lose the next 50 years of our independence. I'm adding a few things in order to make it relevant. But she was saying, in effect, the Osagyefo, in the year 2063, Africa will be different. There'll be an electric rail running from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia to Dakar in Senegal. In the year 2063, Africa will be feeding herself, and the bread basket of Africa will be Zimbabwe in Southern Africa and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Africa will be making her own furniture, and we will do so in a sustainable manner, with the equatorial forests of Congo being the source of our products. I will remember in those years to come, what you now see as the Sahara Desert will have been greened. Africa will be covered in forests. The Democratic Republic of Congo will become the equivalent of the Silicon Valley. There will be rare earth. Africa will use funds made by Africans. Africa will refine their own oil. Africa will use our own copper. Africa will have excess electricity. Africa will have the Inga Dam in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Africa will have built the Grand Renaissance Dam. And indeed, at that time, Sudan will not quarrel with Ethiopia, and Egypt will not quarrel with Ethiopia. They will be using these resources well. Africa will not be importing fish, tilapia, from China. The fish will be produced in Lake Victoria, Lake Tanganyika, Lake Tana, and all these other places. That was the reason of Africa Agenda 2063. It was a dream. But is it not true that we must all dream? We must dream. The only thing that we must do once we have dreamt, we must wake up. The problem is sometimes we dream and we don't wake up. We must wake up and now begin to implement. Do I think that Africa woke up? I think Africa woke up. And that is how I understand the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area is a demonstration that beyond dreaming in a very amorphous manner, we now want to give form and character to our dream by operationalization, so that we begin to bring down the tariff and non-tariff barriers, so that we are able to ensure that Africa will do things that will make Africa great. Intra-African trade will be 80%. And that is why it gladdens my heart that Accra, Ghana was chosen to be the secretariat of the ACTF. I look forward to the day when the protocols are now being made, that we shall begin to take advantage of innovation. You remember Africa lost out in the first industrial revolution. Africa lost out in the second industrial revolution. Africa started gaining a little from the third industrial revolution. We are now in the fourth industrial revolution, where we are talking about artificial intelligence, we are talking about robotics, we are talking about the Internet of Things. We are saying that Africa must now find her pride of place in those areas, so that Africa can be great in agriculture, Africa can be great in education, Africa can be great in value addition, Africa can be great in utilizing our fossil fuels, so that young Africans will not cross the Mediterranean Sea. When I look at Africa, I think that she can be made to work. But the last thing that we must do is to ensure that we introduce hygiene in our politics. Because it all begins and ends with leadership. History has demonstrated, not once, not twice, but times without number, that when you have men and women who are good leaders and they know what they want, they can catapult their countries within a short time into the higher orbits of development. We must now begin to ask ourselves, how do we govern ourselves? How do we create a political environment where all these things can happen? I'm suggesting to us, without being arrogant, I'm speaking hopefully with the humility that will not sharpen the anger of leaders in this forum, but will open their eyes. When you are in a position of honor and privilege, remember that your duty is to serve. Those of you who are cabinet ministers, remember that you are not necessarily the best of men, but you've been favored to be in positions of honor and privilege. You are not necessarily the best of women. Because you have been honored and privileged, serve in humility. And the problem in Africa is that many African leaders suffer from what I call the Jehovah complex. The Jehovah complex is a belief by those in leadership that they have the monopoly of wisdom and they have the monopoly of knowledge. That is not the route. Africa will be great when her leaders begin to know that they have a duty to serve, so that the future generation will be able to make Africa great again. Africa can be great. Africa will be great. Africa will be great in agriculture. Africa will be great in our industries. Africa will be great in our education. Africa will be great in all other things. But the last thing that Africans must do is to decolonize our minds. We must liberate ourselves from this misguided view that we cannot achieve. We can achieve, we have achieved, and going forward, working together, we will achieve. God bless.
PLO Lumumba, one of Africa's most fearless voices, has long cautioned against moments like this. While Africa applauds the innovation, he asked, who really built it? Was this truly Africa's victory? Or just another illusion of progress controlled by outsiders? As he often reminded us, China is not here for charity. They are here for business. In speeches delivered long before Rwanda's flying car launch, Lumumba warned that China and the West are not simply partners, but powerful players with hidden interests. So while Kagame proudly presented Africa's first flying car, Lumumba's early warnings force us to ask, Is this truly Africa rising? Or are we celebrating someone else's achievement? We revisit Lumumba's fiery words when he declared it shameful for Africans to applaud foreign innovations instead of building their own. He urged Africans to study, copy, and improve on China's strategies instead of simply clapping while others dominate. To him, it wasn't just about flying cars or new technology. It was about Africa's mindset, a mindset that could either free the continent or keep it trapped in dependency. President Kagame's unveiling of the Ehangi H-16S in Kigali was a spectacle of progress. Africa finally joined the futuristic race of flying cars. The world's eyes turned to Rwanda. And, for the first time, the continent wasn't just a spectator. Yet, the aircraft wasn't built in Africa. It was a Chinese creation showcased on African soil. For Lumumba, this is the exact trap he warned about: the risk of celebrating foreign-made victories as African milestones. Still, Rwanda's launch marks an important turning point. It shows Africa's hunger for innovation, and it proves the continent is ready to take bold steps. But as Lumumba reminds us, celebration is not enough. Africa must not only host the future, it must build it. The real victory will come when Africans design, produce, and own the technologies that shape tomorrow. And when that day comes, it won't just be Africa's first flying car in the skies. It will be Africa's future, truly taking flight. What do you think? Is Rwanda's flying car a symbol of progress, or just another illusion? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you'd like to see real grassroots innovation, check out the story of a young Burkinabe who built an electric car from scraps. Click the video on screen now. Don't forget to subscribe to Win Africa for more powerful stories and untold truths shaping our continent.